This program might contain strong language. If you think you may be offended, switch off now.
Hey everybody, welcome to Watch Mojo's Inside Podcast. I'm your host Rob. Today I'm joined by our producer Ivan and Watch Mojo CEO Ashkan Kurpis-Frushan, and we'll be talking about an event that Ash, I believe you will be attending this weekend, the Super Bowl. What brings you to the big game?
That's correct. So believe it or not, it's going to be my first NFL game. It's a reflection of how Montreal, unfortunately, over the past few decades has become almost a third world country.
That's not even fair, because even we here in Mexico and Brazil gets an NFL game. So I don't know, maybe lower tier than that, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Well, it says a lot, but no. So this year won't lie because of my little effort in the Peanut Project to bring back MLB and the Expos to Montreal. And obviously, I mean, I can't say I've been doing this discreetly. I mean, it's a very community-driven public outreach kind of thing. I had a lot of my, contacts and industry friends being like, "Oh, are you going to be at the Super Bowl?" Which I get like 1 or 2 emails a year, and I'm always like, "No, too rich for my blood. I'm busy." And I enjoy watching sports on TV because I'm a real sports fan. I mean, I like the experience. But I'm like, no. But this year I got like 10 emails over the last few days, intensifying. And most of them I was like, maybe, okay. I was like, maybe I should go. But what happened was there was a gentleman who was kind enough. It's kind of like coachability test. There was a gentleman who was kind enough to kind of represent me and us to Major League Baseball's office. And then he was like, basically, are you going to be there? And I said, no, but why? He goes, there's a couple of investors that I met who, are looking at such opportunities. Talk to them about you, the Expos, yada, yada. So he was like, okay, but he didn't even say it. But I took that as it's like if the coach is like, I suggest you go in the tape room and watch some, footage of you doing this or that. So that was like, I took it as a sign. So I'm like, okay, so I'll go down and then have a bunch of meetings now. So going there tomorrow, Thursday, which is why we're doing this today on a Wednesday. Thank you, guys. And then Friday, got a bunch of meetings. Saturday, meeting a bunch of people. And then Sunday, I'm at the game, and I'll be back on Monday.
Cool. Well, aside from the Super Bowl, there's a little bit of Watch Mojo news that's been circulating. So we learned about Watch Mojo Studios launching, and you said that it will be launching with a $10 million anchor investment. Now, I know that Super Bowl ads this year cost $10 million a pop. So is there any chance that we're going to be seeing Watch Mojo commercials at the Super Bowl on Sunday?
No. But that's a good little question about allocation of capital. No. So yeah, it's a relaunch of Watch Mojo Studios. When we were doing our 10-year anniversary last decade, in 2016, that's when we embarked on WatchMojo 2020, like where we wanted the company to be in a few years. And, again, just being, as much as I was a striker as a soccer football player, I do believe in like passing the puck before you shoot and setting others, and somewhat for like just humility, insecurities, a lot of, things that with therapy you eventually deal with. I just wasn't comfortable developing, I guess at the end of the day, my projects, stories and scripted stories about life, success, ambition, set in the workplace, but also just dealing with like leadership, life, leisure, obviously woman, romance and all that, but always, this like, drive, ambition, and kind of wanting to get from point A to B. I wasn't really comfortable, pushing those as much as, with hindsight, I learned I should. And not because I think that these are going to win Oscars per se, but more because I understand, like when you start these ideas, the arc is so long that you really, really need not just conviction, but patience. So if you start working with Joe and you bring on Sally to develop the scripts, the outlines, the characters, yeah, sometimes people leave. Sometimes they themselves don't have the same conviction or the project. So with the Studios 1.0, it wasn't like a stillborn project, but there was this lack of conviction. There was no through line. A bit like Sound Mojo. Again, we wanted to showcase others, whereas now it's like what made Watch Mojo successful was betting on ourselves. Not just me, but like collectively, we were like, what are we good at? So Studios relaunching is going to at least start off with about 10 or so projects, comedy, drama, dramedy, feature film style, series style, but also with like digital distribution and traditional TV, theatrical, both being disrupted and blurring and all that. We are in a unique position. So the 10 million, just so people understand, it is a legit $10 million anchor seed starting point. But without going too much in the details, but just in case people are interested. So the model, to dumb it down, is that for like a project that might cost like $1 million, which is not that much, I get it, but just to use a round number, you actually need about $250,000 of cash capital. Then you use like $250,000 of tax credits. We're in Montreal, so there's a lot of like tax credits to produce, to develop, and all that. You then also use another $250,000, sometimes through debt, admittedly, which is like against future revenues. It's all very different if the revenues are going to come from theatrical or if they're going to come from, selling it to a Netflix. And then the last 250 is usually other investors. I'm oversimplifying. So what's interesting is that $10 million, it's kind of like in finance, it's like leverage, but leverage is just debt. But proverbially speaking, figuratively speaking, not literal debt only, I'm leveraging $10 million of the company's balance sheet to really have the firepower of like a $40 million war chest to execute. And I know some people, I got a ton of emails, and I thank you all. I don't think anybody is watching, but I will get back to those. But I'll land here, which is, I told one person, and they were like, we know, Ash, we get this. It's a clever, smart way to approach. I said, 20 years ago when we started, a lot of funds that today are on their third, fourth, fifth, and our $1 billion funds, they literally were more modest, like a $5 million fund or a $50 million fund. But you do have to start there, execute. And then it's all about the battleship strategy. You guys, I like matrices, a matrix. So what it means is I have certain strengths as a storyteller, as a business person, but I'm looking for a creative partner for each one. So I purposely put it out there so that if somebody is like, oh, I'm a writer, I'm a showrunner, I'm a director, I'm an actor, whatever, I really like this story, Dash, or I like that story, Willpower. And then you also connected with a platform. Like some people were like, are these all going to live on YouTube? I'm like, no. I go, we're going to leverage YouTube. Maybe some will actually be digital shorts, but most of them are still going to be packaged and kind of sold in maybe traditional ways. But the idea is that battleship strategy of just two forces colliding for magic to create.
Cool. Well, looking forward to seeing how that project shapes up. Let's get into talking about the game a little bit, because it is a big one. It's a Super Bowl 60 this year. Can you believe it already? 60
I
Super
feel
Bowls.
old. Do you remember the first Super Bowl you ever watched?
No,
So
I must have been a little kid. I can't remember offhand which one.
You, Yvonne?
No, same.
But you don't remember a game? Come on, guys.
No, obviously I remember a game. I remember a lot of playoff games. I started. I root for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I started rooting for them around 2005 when I caught their playoff run for 2005.
Donovan McNabb was the QB at the time.
Yeah. Exactly. So I started following them back then, and those are the games that I remember. Before that, I'm from Colombia, so we don't really get football over there. So it's around 90, let's say 97, 98, 99 when I was here in Mexico. But yeah, around those times. But like the specifics, no, not really.
So I remember vividly the first time. So I always preface this because it's for my American friends. They're like, who do you root for? And because we don't have a team. So in Montreal, like if you get the NBC, CBS, well, usually it was NBC. The affiliate was the Plattsburgh one in upstate New York. So, by the way, which has tremendous amount of support for the Expos, but let's just set that aside. So we get basically a combination of either Jets, New York Jets, a bit less New York Giants. We get a ton of Buffalo Bills, and we get the New England Patriots. So I remember watching games, and I was like, what the hell is the sport? Like, it was cool. It was like a military formation going up and down the field. But I was like trying to understand the downs. And my first QB that I liked was Doug Williams, the first African-American quarterback to win for the Washington Redskins. But I wasn't like that big of a fan because I didn't really understand the game. And so I remember vividly Super Bowl 23, Cincinnati Bengals and Boomer Esiason. And I was like 11 probably. I was 11 going on 12. And they were taking on Joe Montana and the 49ers. And that year, the Bengals had like a tremendous season. Like, I don't think they were 13-3, but they might have been 14-2. Like, they were just crushing it. But I was like, at the end, it was, Boomer Esiason and Joe Montana were on TV. And my older brother, 3 years older, he's like, I'm rooting for the Niners. So I look at him, I'm like, well, I'm rooting for the Bengals, who had this incredible helmet and were favorites going in. Of course, we know what happened. Joe Montana to John Taylor with John Candy in the stands, which is where Montana told Taylor to line up. He was like, you see John Candy over there? He's like, I'm going to throw it like where his big face is. And John Taylor, and there was obviously Jerry Rice was the GOAT, but John Taylor was an equally incredibly talented receiver. So they win 23-16, Super Bowl 23. I was like, okay, Boomer Esiason, Ickey Woods, they'll come back. Decade of infamy. They sucked. They sucked in the 90s, abysmal in the 2000s. I still stay loyal, but obviously I like Barry Sanders, and I'm going to land here. And I like Green Bay before even like Brett Favre. They had this quarterback, Dan Mikowski, that I like. But I'll never forget, I was never into the Jets, Giants. The Bills, I didn't have a problem, even though I was rooting for the Cowboys when they won 4 years in a row and lost 4 years in a row. And I never cared for the Patriots. But then they drafted this guy from Washington named Drew Bledsoe. And he had this arm. And I was always obsessed with, obviously, like quarterbacks that could throw. Remember, like liking Jeff George. I never cared for any of the teams. But I was just like, to me, like, I was a very good receiver, pretty good running back, decent quarterback. So I could appreciate when somebody had like a freaking cannon of an arm. So I was rooting for the Patriots like hard. They were my team going back to the Bledsoe years. And then Bledsoe got hit by a Jets player. And I don't know if his career ended like that game or he was injured. Oh, no, his career did not end. What am I saying? Because then he went elsewhere. He went to the Cowboys. But then they brought in Tom Brady. And Tom Brady is a really, really interesting story because Tom Brady was not a bum in college. He played for Michigan. He was really good. But he didn't have, younger, I was like, he's like a better looking version of Matt Damon. Like to me, they kind of, you don't think? I would like, they're kind of doppelgangers, but it doesn't make sense because Tom Brady is a far better looking guy, and I'm straight, but I'm confident enough to say that. But he did not have the physique. There's that famous tape when he runs and he's like slow, but he just had this thing about him. And so he got drafted in the 6th round, arguably the greatest 6th round draftee, obviously, because he's the greatest quarterback of all time, in my opinion, just on the records. I'm not saying Montana and others don't merit being in the conversation. But so when Brady came in, he was like instant. He just totally, and there was something about his demeanor. There was something about what was between his ears. And I ended up writing my first book, Course to Success, which was really just the story of like hundreds of successful people from business, from sports. And I remember it was like at the end, the last edits, I added a line that stuck to me. And it was like I don't know if it was a lineman or like a receiver, but it was like not a star, but it was a teammate that said, we used to watch this kid in the practice, and there was just something about him. And then in the first snap of that first game, we just knew that he had what was needed, like in terms of, instinct, in terms of just assassin-like I go and he's a good type of sociopath, you know what I mean? And so then I became like this hardcore Pats fan. And so when people are like, you're from Montreal, you must hate the Bruins. And I don't hate the Bruins. I respect them. Obviously, I have to dislike them. But we also like the Red Sox. It's weird, right? Like I grew up always liking the Red Sox. I also don't mind.
I've seen them 3 times in Boston, so yeah.
Oh, you have? Oh, so you've been to Fenway.
Yep.
You've been to Fenway. How's that experience?
Yep. I love Fenway Park. It's beautiful.
Have you been to any other stadiums in the U.S.?
In the U.S.?
No, anywhere. I mean, any other baseball?
I mean, I've been to Toronto, it was the Sky Dome or whatever it's called now, Rogers Stadium. There, and I've seen Expos games here at the Big O. That's pretty much it.
Well, Yvonne, how about you? Any baseball experience?
I've been to the Dodger Stadium. I've been in Toronto to Rogers in this last trip, like this past year. Here in Mexico, I've been starting to go a lot to our baseball stadium, which is really, really fun, which is a lot of fun. But other than that, no, not really.
Obviously, I went to the Big O, which was not a good park for baseball. And, people sometimes, little parentheses, are like, with the Expos, why build a new stadium? And I've said it. I personally will not be comfortable taking any investors' money to say we're going to go play. I think after the first game, euphoria in the dog days of August, if when you're 12 and 14, before you win the World Series, I just feel like it's not. It's like you didn't learn your lesson. That's the definition of insanity. But there's also that like the sport has changed, and like the investors and the league, they want the experience and the whole 365 days, 360-degree experience. But then I saw a game, obviously in Washington, the Nats, which was kind of closure, and of course the Oakland Athletics, which was a fun experience. But no, yeah. So like I think it says a lot though that like and this is kind of starting to eat at me, that like there's a whole generation of Montrealers that have never seen a baseball game. Well, I mean, in Montreal, they've never seen. They may never see an NFL game, because you could plausibly, and it's fair to say, before the NFL even wants to expand into Canada, like it'll be probably Toronto, and I think that's fair. But I'm like, why can't Montreal eventually have an NFL team? Even the NBA, I get it. Like maybe the league would eventually go to Vancouver again, but it's just like this is like starting to become almost personal. Anyway, I was rambling a bit of the sport.
No, it's good. I just thought it was worth noting that this is also a rematch of Super Bowl 49, which I remember quite clearly. The Patriots took that one.
The last, was it Malcolm Butler? He made the crazy defensive interception.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah,
run the ball. I still think we put this on a list of all of the crazy ass bad decisions in sports. Like that could be number one. You have the most dominant running back right there, and you throw it. I mean, you could argue, well, they were expecting the run. That's really the only explanation. But even if you give it to him, he would have plowed through. Anyway, but I was a Pats fan, so I remember vividly.
You were ecstatic.
I was like ecstatic, and I thought it was over, even though I'm an eternal optimist. That was not expected. I was obviously very sober that night, so I was very clear-headed when they did that.
I'm curious to know, as a Pats fan, did you expect the team to bounce back this quickly after the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era ended? There were a few lean years, but now Drake May, it seems like they got a good team and they're back. They're back, baby.
So, there's two factors that are worth mentioning. One is that anytime a team drafts a new quarterback, more so than even trades, because trades, what you're getting. But when you draft a quarterback, you're making a big investment. So either it works or it doesn't. And like to the credit, this is why I think Bob Kraft is an incredible owner, not just because he's won so much, but it takes a lot of courage. I'm not saying he admitted a mistake. I don't speak on behalf of him, but they drafted one quarterback. It did not lead to the result that they wanted. He did not have any pride or ego, or he was not insecure. Obviously the record helps. He was like fine to say, you know what, this isn't working, we're going to go with someone else. So I thought that was really interesting. And then the second dynamic is, back in the day when teams would bring on coaches, now forget if it's like an offensive coordinator who gets promoted or like a head coach who comes, they really was this expectation that like, okay, the first year you get to know the player, the system, this and that. But you are seeing now, especially true young coaches that are just so that is the X factor, right? So no, I did not think that they would bounce back, because I was like, okay, they got this rookie quarterback. They're obviously going to be patient with them. So, well, not rookie, they have this young quarterback. They're going to be, so I did not expect them to kind of cut their losses and go again to the drawing board. And I certainly did not expect a first-year coach to be able to be so good, but, not as erratic and ecstatic as Dave Portnoy, who is from Boston, so it's a bit different. But I was very, very calmly, quietly celebrating and tears of joy on the inside. Because again, like it's weird if like this guy from Montreal is that happy about the Pats advancing. Like, what's up with that guy?
I mean, it goes to one of the comments that they left here, like that not only football is huge right now, like across the globe, and somebody else was saying like only Americans pay attention to football, but it's clearly not. Like here in Mexico is like the fandom is insane, and these are people who have probably never been to a football game, but it's still very much a part of the culture here in Mexico overall, and that being the reason why like Mexico was one of the first places where the NFL took an NFL game, like an official NFL game. So I think it goes very much to that. And New England is, I mean, here the big, I would say the big three. I'm sorry.
Aren't the Raiders? I thought the Raiders had a big fan base.
I'm going to go there because one of the big three here is the Cowboys, obviously, Pittsburgh, and I would say either San Francisco or the Raiders.
What's up with the Pittsburgh connection? Why
I
Pittsburgh?
have no idea.
Because
People love
they've won so
Pittsburgh,
many times.
but it's very old school. But it's very, very old school. Most of the Pittsburgh fans here are very old school. They're usually, I don't know, in their 60s or something along those lines. And their families have continued like that tradition. Same thing with the Cowboys. And most recently, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Pats as well. You know. We do make a joke that they're usually the same fan that just switches jerseys like back and forth. But you know, other than that, I think it's mostly that. So it does have a global reach, yeah.
So because I find the NFL to be the most, and this is not a knock, this is just that it is like entertainment, galore. Is the NFL, would you agree or disagree that it's the most made for TV sports production?
Yes.
Yes, because I feel like
I think you need the analysis from the sportscasters more than in other sports.
That's a good point.
And it's the one sport that I think was tailor-made for commercial breaks and tailor-made for that type of situation.
That's a very good point.
They're just 15 minute they just play for 15 minutes for 4 quarters, and other than that you need to fill out 4 hours of whatever the hell. So I think
4 hours. ESPN is like a marathon, like 24 hours before. You know what's interesting, because again, I've never gone to an NFL game because we're in Montreal. Apparently we are told what we can do. And
have you ever been to an Alouettes game? I'm sure you have. Those
yes,
CFL, I know it's apples and oranges.
No disrespect to the CFL. I mean, CFL, okay, here's the thing that might shock you. The CFL, when I was growing up and I was like watching way too much sports, there was a period where the Super Bowl generally was a very lackluster event. There was blowouts, like Broncos lose 55-10 to Niners, or like insane. It was like, okay. And the CFL, the Grey Cup, was always a superior game. Like there was a stretch where like the last play determined it. I also feel that like 3 downs is not crazy, because in 3 downs, you really have to freaking not waste time. And, to what Yvonne's point, it's not like a placeholder for ads. Like you got like showtime, you know what I mean? The bigger, field I find is not really, to me, what like makes the CFL like that. I'm like, you could, for like logistics, that one is not to me like, oh my God, how dare you, but I also like the running start, which I don't think would make sense in the NFL, but it adds this cool element of like, when you just play on the, with your friends and like in a park or something. So I'm not knocking the CFL, but the CFL is not the caliber of league. We're talking about, business and the business and the hoopla. So yeah, no, I'm very excited to go, but I do feel like looking into the Expos, as much as it could be, a long shot. I've said it. I said the part that I control, which is just putting together the pieces and submitting an offer. I want to be conservative and not let the fans up. You guys know me. That's like what I can do. There's so much I can't do that I come to you guys for. That to you is so easy. I mean, there's specifically things I know, Rob, you and I are working on that you're like, Ash seems to really appreciate this. It's not that hard, but it's more like to get others involved. So it's not just, it's kind of like there's an element of team play and all. And also I trust your artistry. I'm not saying that's not the point, but I just find like football does seem like I'll be there and I know I'm there and I know who I'm going to meet, and I have to, like an assassin, just come down, in and out for, more than 24 hours, obviously. But I feel like when I went and saw like Canada versus Argentina at Meadowlands, it was a great experience. It was like so much fun. When I saw Croatia Spain at Euro in Berlin, oh my God, like greatest moments, in terms of experiences. I feel like, okay, it's the Super Bowl, so it's a bucket list item, but I there's a part of me, which might sound blasphemy, people are like, I can't believe you said that. There's a part of me that almost wants to just watch it on TV because of what you said, and it's the same thing. I use that as an example of like, guys, we all have comparative advantages. Whenever I hear like, he's like reading the defense, I'm like, mofo is just standing there, I'm like, the linebacker ain't moving. What do you mean he's reading? What is he reading? But that's just like, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, not just because of his arm or whatever, his like body or stature that comes into play, but that's his expertise. The way I could look at like something and go, to private equity, high net individual, strategic partnership, lease this. Costco, could you do this? It's like we all have these things. So really, really looking forward to it. But I feel it's just going to be like, what did I watch? Like I missed every play. Not complaining.
It is. And the experience, I think, for most sports, I think it's that. Unless you, I don't know, it happens to me in baseball, for example. I go with somebody that knows the game and can like explain kind of like what's the situation, what's going on. Same thing in hockey and stuff like that. My first hockey game was in the Winter Olympics in Sochi in Russia, and I was working. So I just, I looked at it, I taped it, I was doing all these things. I had no idea what was going on, but it was a ton of fun, But it was more the atmosphere, and it always usually comes down to like the fans and the atmosphere in the stadium, because if there is a bad game, the fans are not going to like it, and it's going to be a boring game overall. You're not even going to enjoy like either the sportsmanship or the audience or anything like that. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of all of that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, it's more like, sorry to cut you off, Rob. It's more likely, Yvonne, that I come watch an NFL game with you in Mexico than you watch an NFL game with me in Montreal. So at least we know when that's going to happen. All right, sorry.
I wanted to know what you guys think, because we were just talking about how international the NFL has become. But where do you think the Super Bowl ranks among the world's biggest sporting events?
Oh, like 10th, right, Ash? I mean, it's not even with like cricket and even like football, like soccer, the actual original football. I don't think it ranks like that high.
You don't think it's in the top 10 or maybe
well,
just
I mean, maybe
top
the
10?
top 10, maybe even the top 5, but I don't think it's the
Yeah,
biggest
you're very
one
ethnocentric. You Mexicans, you just have no respect for other cultures. You
What?
Sarcasm. It's funny you said 10, and actually I do want to, so I actually think it's top 5, but let me explain. If
I was excited.
we watch Mojo, because our audience is American, let's just be fair. It's not we're pandering, but it's like if we put cricket number 1, it's kind of like, tell me you don't know your audience well. So I think like we might put it number 3, because I think, the World Cup final would probably be huge. I don't think like the 100-meter dash in the Summer Olympics would necessarily beat the Super Bowl, although it's a lot more people might tune in globally or whatever. However, we did something, and I won't, that negates what I just said, because this is an event, right? Like it's an event. But in terms of leagues, I remember when we were doing, I think, top 10 leagues in the world. And I always go, some things just send to me, even if you guys, one of the inmates run the asylum, and I'm like, if it might not be litigious or if it might not be super damaging, I just trust you guys, but I'm still like, okay, give me a heads up at some point before. So other things, I'm like, initially, let me be involved to frame it, to make sure it doesn't go the rails. Then I'm like, you guys do whatever you want. And I rarely push back because I know there's a lot of research that goes in. I did make not a mistake, more of a hindsight, because I think it was sound. When we did leagues, we put, I think, the NFL one. But even though I know the Premiership is much bigger and globally, I mean, like when Premiership games are on, it's a much bigger deal. But I did feel the reason when I saw it and the NFL was one, I didn't push it for number 1. I think if that list would have come across my desk, so to speak, and sports, because I'm like, sports are really like fanatics, but also even though we did sports before we did movies, people sometimes don't know how much like we know sports. It's just, we decided to double down on certain things. But if it was like, if the Premiership League would have come across my desk as number 1, I would have been like, okay, great. That makes sense. When the NFL came, I was like, okay, first of all, we're an American media company. If you really think about it, that's our audience. So if we put Premiership, I don't know if the 80% of our audience would have agreed, and they would have been so. But it just goes to show that it's a lot of perspective, and it's a lot. But I do think the Super Bowl is, could even be 3. I mean, but I don't think anything really beats. Like, Yvonne, do you think, what would you put number 1? To me, it's World Cup final, which I think is just
say the World Cup final.
Yeah, because the World Cup final. Sorry. Yeah, I mean the World Cup final. And Euro is like, I've been very lucky. I've been in Greece many times in the summer when that's played. I know wherever I am, even in the States, not even the final, like when you get to the semifinal, I know wherever I am, I will be able to watch it. But you can't say the same thing about the Super Bowl.
Right. But definitely number 1 in America, right? There's no
by
a large margin.
No, and globally, just in numbers and business, the Super Bowl is probably, we had the graph pulled up, the cost of the ads for the Super Bowl, which is always a number that gets thrown out in conversation when talking about the Super Bowl, and it's up to $8 million for 30 seconds. So
Some ads this year were sold for over 10. I mean,
yeah,
this is a classic textbook example of demand and supply. One, but it is also telling. I mean, the Super Bowl and the ads are not representative of linear TV, but it is like, again, maybe the Super Bowl, the ratings keep going up. But I mean, this is a challenge and why the TV is getting disrupted, because there's less and less viewers, but media companies are trying to squeeze that orange more and more. It's like, bro, you use that lemon in your cooking, your dressing, your salad, your water. You need to, there's nothing left to squeeze. But the Super Bowl, that's how powerful it is. It's also like a statement. Like when, let's say back in the day, people might have made fun of pets.com, but if pets.com didn't want to just be seen as a .com, it would do that. If Amazon was like, we're going to make our first TV ad, we're going to put it there. So I think it will defy, again, not that but it's very much like sports franchise valuations. It's demand and supply. I mean, they will not go down. There's not that many of them. There's not going to be that many more of them. A league cannot just keep adding inventory. So it is a bit of an outlier, and it is a bit of like a, it cloaks the real risks that are still around for television as audiences are eroded and shifting. And it's a double whammy, because it's not just that the audiences are getting older and, not to make light of this, dying. It's also that the older people are spending more time on the internet and turning to entertainment there. So, I think it's like, enjoy it, but at some point you'll also just see more of a convergence between what's TV and what's the web.
Ash, do you think the NFL is like the most heavily scrutinized business model for sports overall? Because you hear about, all the time, you hear about the salary caps and all the movement behind the scenes, not only of teams, but their connection with big businesses and with corporations and stuff like that. Do you think it is? Even Brady, who got just in this year with the Raiders, is it that?
The short answer, really like legally sound, is I think no. I think baseball, because of the antitrust factor, which is a hardcore legal thing around monopolies and the legacy and the national pastime. I think now it's a paradox. I think baseball, and I'm not saying this again, like I definitely say things that sometimes people don't like, but it's earnest, it's sincere, it's respectful. But I think baseball, yes, they had this challenge with the alleged steroid used in the era of Sosa and McGuire, which I think a lot of people were like, what the hell? So you could say, well, is it really scrutinized? But put that aside, but I'm just saying, because at the core, the antitrust exemption is like the cornerstone of like the rules of engagement of baseball in America. I think baseball will remain pretty scrutinized. Now, that said, I think because the NFL has grown so large, so powerful, so lucrative, that yes, more day-to-day scrutiny goes towards the NFL. Now, if I could be candid, I also think that the NBA gets a different kind of scrutiny. And guys, I'm not like the social virtue guy, but I do think the NBA, because it's such more of a African American Black athlete sport, gets a different kind of scrutiny than the other sports. I'm just going to leave it there. I mean, that's a whole can of worms neither of you want to go through. So it's always like, what is the scrutiny? You're like, yeah, Ash, let's move on. This is a light show. But
but what I mean is we don't have that experience as basketball fans, and we don't take it that way. So I couldn't really talk about it overall.
No, but I mean, I'll tell you, and again, we could go back to the lighter stuff. When like, let's say sometimes fans or media criticize like the athletes and because they're dressed a certain way. I don't know if like, and I think it's great. Like hockey, we're very different. The athletes are polite. They're nice. It's always like the team, they don't say words. Like in football, the players don't even talk. It's the coaches like Marino who come out and say batshit crazy things. And you're like, is this AI? So it's like every league has its own distinct, but I think the NBA, some of the criticism is fine, but I think some of the criticism is tinged a bit with like more racial, social commentary. But I think to your answer, baseball for sure because of antitrust, but NFL just because of the size and scope of it.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it back to the commercials just for a second, because it's a bit of a weird situation. Like,
Let's
first of
bring it
all,
back down.
bring it back down, because also Super Bowl commercials are, a big deal for Watch Mojo. Our audience loves that, and our videos counting down the top 10 commercials each year are some of our most successful videos. But not only is it a great place for advertisers to get a lot of eyeballs on their stuff, it's also the fact that they do such crazy commercials for the Super Bowl brings in a new audience. So it's kind of like a layer upon layer thing that doesn't really happen anywhere else.
But you know what? My take on that is we here in Mexico, we just started to get into commercials, into the US commercials. So here it's always been like generic commercials during the Super Bowl. Somebody might do something kind of special, but it's only now that again it's getting kind of like a global thing, because only now is the NFL kind of pushing towards putting the commercials online and putting them on YouTube right as the game is going on, and only then are you looking at them, because it's very, very localized. Like you'll catch maybe we get here a service called the DAZN, DAZN, for
DAZN,
watch
we have that.
DAZN for watching like football overall,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll part of the appeal of that is that you'll get the American commercials, right? Even if you don't know the products or anything, you'll get the American commercials. So I think it's very, very localized. I don't know for you guys in Canada as well, but at
Yeah,
least here in
I mean,
Mexico and Latin America, it's like that. Yeah.
So from like a sociological sense again, yeah, for the longest time we used to get largely pretty much all of the US TV ads as well. And that was like part of the appeal. And you're right, it was a lot of people. Like if you had a Super Bowl party, and not to be stereotyped, but sometimes, I mean, look, there's hardcore football girls fans that are ladies, but if you had a party, the girls would lean in more towards like the ads than the game. I mean, those were my memories. But so because of the CRTC, and yes, as a consumer, I trashed it. But again, as like a media analyst, I understood it. Because of the CRTC regulations, and also just like if you think about like what the Bell Media's paid and like what the Rogers paid for rights, they were like, well, it would be kind of good if we would be able to run ads for our clients. It was like that came into consideration, which again, as a fan you hate, but as a neutral like observer you understand. So that kind of put a big twist on it. And then it was like for us, we would miss. It was like we were like again second tier citizens of the world. We would miss these ads. We couldn't see them before like the internet, and then like the next day everybody's talking about it, and you would be like lost. Now that has reverted a bit. I think now you do see the same, or not the full 100% of the ad breaks are the same, but you kind of see the ads. But what has changed, and this is more about the internet, and again, this moment of this search for virality and the water cooler and all that, is most of these brands release the ads before. That is something that, as much as an impatient mofo I love, I think that was probably not smart. Like it was smart for somebody to do it once, as like that's the marketing is that fact that we're jumping the gun. But now that most of these run before, they actually detract. So if you're young and you don't remember how much the ads are part of it, you're just conditioned that you're like, well, these are just ads. They're more expensive.
Okay, I've seen these before. Yeah, it ruins the
But
surprise.
Yeah, so that is like weird, and that's how. Yeah, sure, the web. I mean, without the web, I'd probably be unemployed, type of thing. But I mean, that's where like the web has just like crapped on a lot of things that we grew up with, and now are just bastardized.
Yeah. So you have the game, you have the ads, and the other thing that completes the trifecta is the halftime show, which also brings in a lot of viewers too. And so this year it's Bad Bunny doing the halftime show, and maybe you can talk about this, Yvonne, because there's been a little bit of controversy around him. And
why? Because I'm Latino. What's going on, man?
Because I know that you care.
You've
spoken about it.
Little tendencies garb there, like the button up thing, the bandana, just straight out of like central casting a stereotype.
No, I mean it's been a thing. It's a whole situation, but I think it's more based on the political climate right now. He's not the first Latino to do it. Shakira and Jennifer Lopez again a couple of years ago had their halftime show. It was really cool. So it's more of a political climate right now in the States.
But I think it's also, and again, some of the smartest people I know are Americans. Like I don't, not everybody is, but I think it's also that a lot of people may not know that he's from Puerto Rico.
Oh,
and Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think some of it. Now, can I ask you something? Just again, I love. I lived in Madrid. Every time I go to whether it's Mexico or Argentina, I love it. I'm like these. Not that these are my people. I'm not crazy, but I like nothing but respect.
Don't pull out the I have a Latino friend so I can talk.
No. I have a Latino friend. I only use that for gays and black people. I'm kidding.
There you go. Perfect. Got it.
Totally wrong. No, but I do have a question. How much is it that he doesn't sing in English, right? Because Shakira, right? He has no songs in English, or he does
no songs in English. He has no songs in English.
So I look, I said it. I think some of it is the Puerto Rico ignorance, naivete, that it is an American territory. I think some of it is the climate, but how much of it is the fact that he doesn't sing in English? And then is that a fair thing? Because we just spent some time saying that this is America's biggest thing, and I'm like, okay, if you're X% of the American population, like Shakira comes and shakes her thing, and we love her, and J-Lo is J-Lo.
Oh, she sings in English. Like Shakira very much has songs in English. Yeah, I mean, with Bad Bunny, I think it's two things. Part of the accolades of him is that he is maybe the biggest Spanish-speaking artist right now in the States, right? His fame is basically it's based mostly in the States. In Latin America, he's good, he's known, he's not the best, right? In Latin America.
Not to get the best. Is he as popular outside of America as inside of America?
He is not. He is not. I mean, here in Mexico, a lot of people dislike him, like overall.
Because what? They say he's a sellout?
No, not really. It's just we have so much of almost kind of like the same music here, and so many artists like in Spanish and stuff like that. So overall, over there, you could compare it to something like a K-pop kind of feeling, and the it's more exotic, and people are enjoying these Latin beats a little bit more, and he's very much an embodiment of that, of those beats and everything. Like so. To say that they're ostracizing like 50% of the population because he's only singing in Spanish, I think it's kind of disingenuous because a lot of people speak Spanish in the States, and it's just one part of the population, So I don't know. Again, I think it's more that, and when you boil it down to that conversation of he's not American, but he is from Puerto Rico, which is an American territory, is very much again going back to kind of like the climate of things right now. Because he's not the first, he won't be the last, and he'll probably bring on guests that sing in English. And Green Day is opening the Super Bowl, right? And they are very much American band. I think it's that. I think it's mostly that. And I mean, kudos to I don't like all his decision, but kudos to Goodell right now, because he was asked about this, and Bad Bunny took a stand against ICE like most people did at the Grammys and stuff like that. He's like, well, Bad Bunny very much represents a lot of what's going on right now, a lot of the sentiment, and he can probably very much catered to both sides of the aisle on here. So he's going to do a great show. And I completely agree. He is very much a showman. He's very much a really cool artist, a very successful artist. And I think that's what they look for at the Super Bowl halftime, So I don't know. I think he's going to do great.
It's funny though, and I don't disagree. I appreciate the conversation. And I ask questions not necessarily that I feel it. It's just to get, not just agreeing like nice Canadians. You said you gave props to Commissioner Goodell, and I agree. I mean, it was ultimately his decision. But isn't Jay-Z isn't he the producer, I think, of the halftime show? Or am I mixing it up?
I don't think he is. I think he did one Super Bowl when he I think it was a couple of Super Bowls ago when he brought in Snoop Dogg and him and all of them. Yeah, I'm not really sure though. I'm not really sure because remember they went from Pepsi to Apple, and then right now I don't know who's producing it. Yeah.
Okay. No, because it's funny giving props to Roger Goodell. Again, merits, not a problem. But I remember the first time somebody on the web mentioned that. They're like, Jay-Z, but you're right. He might not be the producer anymore. So we could move on. Okay. All right. Moving along.
You also had sent us a link, Yvonne, about this Turning Point USA alternative Super Bowl halftime show with Kid Rock. Which seems to be catering to, I presume, all the people who are upset about the Bad Bunny performance.
Yes,
yes,
it is. I mean,
what's your take on that?
I think one of our teammates said it best, Tyler. It's like, and again, this is very personal. I think it's just ignorant and a really bad take on the whole thing, because if they want to it's very much based on just like xenophobia and racism, and that's what it is, because they got 4 white people to sing country music, and Kid Rock is not the best representation of American values, if you ask me. He's sung about underage women and all, really, really bad song before. So I don't think that's the way to go, but it is just basically like they don't speak Spanish, and that makes it all American to them. That's my take.
The word's not weird. Like not irony, like it's not but like the thing about it is that if it wasn't Turning Point, like nobody else would. I'm not knocking. I mean, it's a free world. America's free. People should do what they want. But like nobody else really would have objected to the point of saying we're going to do a separate show to purposely, make a statement. And then so once it's them, well, then you can't make it, even though you're like I'm not saying that they're for unity, but it's like you can't then invite certain people, because to make the point, you got to go get certain artists that resonate. So that's the only thing I find a bit weird. And my takeaway is just a diplomat, and people criticize me because they're like, you're both siding a thing. And yeah, I do. It's because people got to get along. Like, you guys may disagree. The only way we work together is if I focus on what you agree on, like whether we like it or not. But I'm like, I understand though that like there could have been another act at the halftime show, and then it would have probably prevented all this. This is where sometimes I go, put yourself in the shoes of others. If you're going to have a unilingual Spanish artist who's not even American, I'm kidding. Then I'm like, maybe if you would have somebody else open up. And I know they added Green Day, and I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes, I always go, like, people make criticisms, and sometimes they're not even right. Sometimes they're wrong. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you could foresee things happening. So then you're like, well, did you want this scandal? Because it helps and all that. So it's hard to really like objectively talk about it, because you also go like, well, it's not really a surprise given the climate, as much as it's wrong. I'm like, it's kind of like, I think this was almost like choreographed.
I mean, it probably goes to like the new audience also of the NFL. You were talking about the evolving audience, and they are bringing a lot of new, like young people are bringing in a lot of women as well to the NFL, and they're bringing out a lot of other countries. So that's another thing I think you got to contend with when choosing your artists and when choosing people. So if they're already in hot water with Bad Bunny, then you bring in Green Day, which they are not that friendly to anything American right now. I think it's more of that social statement and trying to take that stance instead of bringing somebody else in, because they did last year, and they did a couple of years back where they brought in country people, like people who sing country and stuff like that. But I think the end.
I know what you mean.
Country artists, let's say. Country music artists. They do that, and then I think I give props to Goodell before, but right now I think sometimes they overcorrect, and they do it in a way that seems very weird, because nobody stood up for Kaepernick, for example, when that happened, and all of a sudden now all the helmets say hope and love and unity and stuff like that. So they tend to overcorrect. It could be that as well, but I think within that you do give props to people or like to them to at least try and bring in new voices to the conversation, I guess.
Yeah, you mentioned more women being attracted to football now. How much do you think Taylor Swift is responsible for that over the past couple of years?
Hey, listen, from what I know, she is a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan. So that's cool. She happened to marry into a football family, and that conversation always seemed ridiculous to me. People complaining that she's always on screen. She had like 8 seconds of screen time, like average during the games.
And but it's all people can talk about.
Exactly. It's all people could talk about. Then focus on the games then, if you don't want to see her. I don't know. I think it's that conversation, and people can go to extremes, and that's it. But I completely love having Taylor Swift, because it gives people something else to talk about during the games. It gives her something else to talk about also, because she is a huge football fan. So, you know,
It's
And it gives the
entertaining.
conspiracy theorists something to talk about too, because the Chiefs made it to like what 2 or 3 Super Bowls with Taylor Swift in the
I think it
audience.
was
Like,
I think it's just one. I
was
think
it
it
just
just
one?
made it to one, and they lost to Philadelphia, or to 2, and then they won 1 and lost 1 to Philadelphia, and that was it. They didn't do anything else this year, and this year they were getting married, so this would have been the year for them to make it
This
to
would
the
have been the
Super Bowl.
year.
So, you know, it kind of cancels out, I guess.
Do you guys have a favorite halftime show performance from your memories?
Prince, Purple Rain,
Prince?
in the rain. I mean, when it started to rain, and I find, I'm sure when we did top 10 best solo outros, again, I was very democratic, but I wouldn't be surprised if Purple Rain Prince was number one. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful ones. So to me, that one probably stands out.
A lot of people go to Michael Jackson. I'd probably agree on that one, but of the latest ones I enjoyed a lot. I don't know. I think the Rihanna concert was really cool. Of the latest ones, I think. But yeah,
Well,
yeah, I think
the
so.
one, the one in LA, was it LA or Vegas? But like where it was like a rap, it looked like a
Yeah,
rap video.
LA.
Like that's
Yeah.
the production one, and I think that's the one my Bengals, the other team, I like. That's the side. It's like, oh, balance and justice. You're a Bengals fan, so eternal hell and damnation. But now you get to become a Pats fan because of this chosen one, Tom Brady, and all you do is win. No, I thought that production-wise, I was
Yeah,
like, yeah,
that
it's
was
pretty
really
cool. But again, that moment just with Prince in the ring to me is chef's kiss.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
No,
You just mentioned Tom Brady, and it made me think, did we mention the fact that he was drafted by the Expos when we were talking about that before? Yeah,
So yeah, no, he was drafted by the Expos, and a lot of fans on social were like, "Are you going to reach out to Tom Brady about investing?" And I was like, "The check size." I'm like, Tom Brady is a very successful person on the field in other areas and financially, but I'm like, it's a big check size. But no, I'm well aware, and that's all I will say. But yeah, he was drafted. I think he has an affinity to the franchise, just as a like I used to work at RBC, so I always held like a affinity to the bank for that reason. But in the end, he'll always be known as a Pats.
fair enough. All right. Well, before we wrap it up, do you guys have predictions for the outcome of the game? Who do you see winning? What do you think the score will be? I'll start with Ivan.
I'll go Seahawks, just because I don't like the Pats at all. I've been saving that for the end, but no, I don't like the Pats at all. I'm glad that they're kind of coming back, and we're gonna see a different Super Bowl than we have in the past few years and stuff like that. But I think the Seahawks might take it there. I think it's gonna be close as well. I don't know. I'm seeing like a 24-21 kind of situation. For that one.
Let me make a note for HR regarding
there
Ivan.
we go. Hey,
so look,
yeah.
No, so the Seahawks are favored, and I think the Pats haven't been scoring that many points to get to where they are. And it is true that they've had a pretty easy run. But I don't know. I think, just as a Pats fan, I can't really say go Seahawks. I mean, I want everybody to do well. I don't want anybody to get injured or anything. But I still think the Pats will find a way to pull it off, even if it's not expected. But I mean, the Seahawks are favored. But it's like the Habs. Whenever they play, I'm like, the Habs are going to win. They'll find a way, So I'm not saying I'm a betting man in that sense, but I know who I'll be rooting for.
Yeah, I do like the Patriots. I have nothing against them. But I think I am going to say Seahawks too. Mostly because I think it would be cool to see Sam Darnold win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Journeyman quarterback, great team, great defense, good coaching. I like the Seahawks overall.
So I, honest to God, love that story because there's way too many quarterbacks, talent, human beings that get drafted by these coaches and GMs and systems, and then they just kind of like botched these young kids basically. And then they get thrown under the bus, they get criticized, and sometimes it's just a change of scenery and just being given an opportunity. So yeah, I do like that story, absolutely. But again, I'm a Pats fan, so.
I mean, it goes back to also like a Nick Foles kind of story when they beat the Pats back in 2017. It goes to that, and he kept on working and stuff like that. But I think Sam Darnold kind of mirrors that as well. And like what you mentioned, and giving props to Brady. He said in an interview, he was talking about these young kids drafted early out of college and given all this like pre-stardom in the NFL, and then just, you talk about Brady Quinn, or you talk about all these quarterbacks that didn't amount to anything, but they were superstars even before they came into the NFL,
I don't know if we could turn it around, but we might want to publish it after, given to update whether Darnold wins or not. But top 10 quarterbacks that were given up on and came back to get the last laugh. I mean, there's a lot of those. So that would note itself. Let's do that list. Yeah, no, it's exactly, you guys hear me. I'm like, I always want to position people to succeed. So around their strengths, give them time, figure things out, ask them, what are your weaknesses that we can mitigate? But I think the problem is just the NFL. It's such a big business. And, also, I'm not defending it, but because these players then with their agents, God bless them, command these huge salaries, I think it distorts like the coaches and the GMs and the presidents and the owners to think, this guy's going to walk off and crush it, when they're boys. Like, they're being chased down by like these machines, like these like dinosaur-like creatures. It's like crazy. You know what I mean? Look at these defensive linemen and line. It's just, I'm like, why do you think that this guy who last year was like sitting in, introduction to archaeology or something is going to just come now? It's like, I find that a bit weird, but
Yeah. I mean, NCAA is it's a whole other show we could do, especially with everything that's going on right now. But yeah.
Yeah, not my domain of expertise, but for sure we can.
Were you more of an NCAA college or college basketball or football fan?
What, me? No, I like college. I like football. I like college football. I like the games. The games are a lot faster.
Yeah, but I was growing up. I was a huge college football fan. I mean, it was like Saturday to watch. It was like, and I felt it was more pure. Again, I'm not saying anything. This is what makes them great. I felt it was more pure. It was more about the school. You had these players, but you knew they were come and go, and you wished them well. But I just, anyway.
Yeah, it's what we wish the NFL could be, and you mentioned the CFL being, because it's more pure, it's more about the game, it's less about the business, and sometimes it seems a lot more dangerous because these kids are hitting themselves against a brick wall every single time, but they go for it, and it's given a lot of really cool highlights as well. So yeah.
Cool.
All right, gentlemen. Well, this was a great conversation. As we wrap it up, let's play a little track from the Aria album that Ash has been working on, and I've been contributing a little bit to myself.
Yeah. Cool.
It's been an interesting experience.
So I do want to say it again. My favorite. Do you have a song you like more of the ones we've released so far as demos? Just as we're like still figuring out a few things. But
I mean, the one that we're going to listen to now is Free Run, right? And I think that one's my favorite one. We've done so many versions of that one, so there's been a variety. Yeah.
My favorite one is Tantrums. I really think anybody who has not heard it, I find I mean, this is so bad to say because I'm producing them, I guess. But I remember when like WatchMojo took the direction that eventually led to its success, clips, VO a little bit, like, just the packaging. It was because I couldn't find anything I liked. So I was like, I know what's missing, but I want to produce the kind of video that I would want to watch. And it worked. Follow your gut. And so I find Tantrums is like now like the culmination of like all of the songs and styles that I would listen to. So that one, if you want, go on WatchMojo.com, and it's probably one of the songs on top. But yeah, because you mentioned the Grammys, and I won't go there, and to think of Ricky Gervais, not one of these single mofos that said a lot about other things, and Billie Eilish, whom I like a lot as an artist, and I will never say anything even remotely stereotypical, misogynist. I love Billie Eilish. I think she's incredible. But even when she sits there talking about stolen land, and then the Native Americans came out and they're like, hey, memo to you, your house is on our land. It just goes to show how hypocritical they are, that not a single person said anything about Iran, which is the country I was born in. So, I understand, I might have a little bit of a bias. But so this album Aria was like in production. It wasn't like anywhere near being ready. But I was like, when all this, sad genocide that we're all trying to prevent from turning into a Holocaust was happening, I was like, let's start to get some songs out just because I was kind of losing my mind. So yeah, we're going to play, I think, version 8 of Free Iran, which is a translation, reimagination of Iran, which was the #1 song in the top 10 iconic Iranian songs. So without any further ado, we shall ride out with that, and you can play whatever until like maybe the first lyrics.
All right, you want to go out with this one, and we'll call it the next time. Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Together we stand in your sacred light. Against all darkness we rise and fight. With iron will we face your foes. For your pure love my spirit knows. Since your life